But even though closing will be much easier, I'm still going to share with you some things that you can do to become a better closer. And one of those things is to trial close. Trial closing is basically asking questions that perform somewhat of a test close. We're not actually closing the prospect on moving forward, but we're saying something or asking something that tests where the prospect is regarding moving forward. And this is extremely powerful because when you trial close, you're going to be asking questions that find out what the prospect is thinking regarding your discussions and regarding the product that you have to sell. And this will help you to improve your control over the sales process and help you to improve your close rate at the end of the sales process because it's going to extract extremely valuable information. And some examples of what trial closing looks like is just simply asking questions like, what do you think about what we've discussed so far? How do you think this fits with what you're needing? Would that feature help you? Is that something you would use? Are we heading in the right direction? Is this what you were expecting to see? And so as you can see, if you ask these questions, you're going to learn directly from the prospect in their own words what they're thinking, how you're doing, and the direction overall that you're going. And this information can be extremely helpful because it can either confirm that you're going in the right direction and you indeed likely have a prospect that's going to purchase from you, or you can identify that you're off track and you need to make adjustments in terms of what you're discussing or what you're proposing as a solution or what you're demonstrating might need to be tweaked a bit and you need to change the direction slightly, and that slight modification could improve your ability to close at the end of the sales process. And when you think of closing, you might often think of something that you do at the very end of the sales process. But one thing about trial closing is that you can do this at every step of the sales process. You can trial close every time you speak with or meet with the prospect. Even if the close is months away and many meetings away, you can still check in to say, how do you feel about what we just discussed? Or how do you feel about what you've seen in our solution so far? The next tactic is to try to find a compelling event. A compelling event is a date that is a significant factor in the prospect purchasing what you sell. For example, if you sell some sort of software and the prospect's using another software product that you would replace, and if the support contract for their existing system expires on the last day of the year is a compelling event. The prospect likely needs to have a new system in place, up and running, or contract in place when that contract expires. So that date is a compelling event, and uncovering that date can be something you can use when you're trying to close the prospect and when you're trying to manage the sales process. For example, if a prospect is trying to reschedule a meeting with you and push it out another month, you could use that compelling event to prevent that meeting from being pushed out so far, or to prevent that meeting from being rescheduled by letting the prospect know, yeah, sure, we can reschedule that, but just so you know, if you need to have a new system in place by the end of the year, delaying that meeting is going to impact the ability to have something in place on that timeline. Now, the best way to uncover compelling events is by asking good questions, and we talked about questions you could ask in a previous video in the series, and all of those questions should help you to uncover compelling events. And compelling events that might already exist and naturally be occurring on the prospect side could be contracts expiring. Maybe the prospect is moving from one site to another or opening up a new site. That would be a compelling event. Maybe the software that they use that you could potentially replace is being discontinued. That discontinuation date would be a compelling event. But if you ask all of your questions and you're not able to uncover a compelling event, you could manufacture one. For example, if you maybe introduce a discount and you include an expiration date for that discount, say, for example, this is a discount that is going to expire at the end of the quarter, and I don't know what the discount would be in the next quarter, that expiration date then becomes a compelling event, or an expiring promotion, or limited product availability could be a compelling event. The next tactic is to introduce and use a partnership plan with your prospect. A partnership plan is simply a plan or a list of steps that will occur between the time that the plan is introduced and lead up to the customer either purchasing your product or going live with the software that you're trying to sell. And so this is basically a plan that you and the prospect can agree on and partner on and work against in your process to get them up and running and purchasing your software. And by having this plan, it will be easier to close the prospect at the end of your sales process and manage them the remainder of your sales process. Now, as I mentioned, the partnership plan is really just a list of the steps between basically now and the end of the process. And what you can do is you can create the first version of the partnership plan on your own with your knowledge of the steps that need to be done from your side, and also include the steps that you think the prospect might need to go through on their side. And you can include a date when each step needs to be done, and you can include the owner of those different steps. And like I said, some of the owners of these steps would be on the prospect side. And once you have this, then you can present this to the prospect at a particular point in your sales process. For example, you might present the partnership plan right after you share the demonstration. Or if you're delivering some sort of proposal to the prospect, you could have one of the last pages being the partnership plan. And the way that I would introduce this and present this to the prospect is by saying something like, if you'd like to keep moving forward, this is what our partnership plan looks like. These are some of the steps that need to be taken between now and you getting up and running. And then you could do a close, not necessarily a close for the prospect buying your product or service, but a close for getting agreement on the prospect to agree to this plan and moving forward with this plan. And you could close for that by saying something like, based on what we've discussed today, are you interested in moving forward with this plan? Now, the best case scenario is that you close the prospect on agreeing to this plan, but in some cases, the prospect might not be ready to agree to the plan, and that could be very reasonable. And what you can do there is you could still use this plan to improve your ability to close, and you just focus on closing for the next step in the plan by saying something like this. Okay, no problem at all. Do you have interest to move forward to the next step of this partnership plan? So for example, if we're using this exact plan that's on the screen here, let's say that this is the end of the demonstration and the next step is a discovery meeting. I could say something like, no problem at all, I understand. Tell you what, can we get agreement to at least move forward to the discovery meeting? And I close the prospect on that, and we get that on the calendar, and we lock that in as our next step. Now, whether you close for the entire plan or just the next step, what you also want to do before you wrap up the discussion around the partnership plan is you want to finalize this plan and build the plan together with the prospect. Because in most cases, what you did is you took a first pass at listing out the steps, and you might have used some assumptions with what you created here. You want to validate that this list is correct and complete with the prospect and finalize it together by saying something like this. Great. Do these steps and time estimates look correct and acceptable to you? Do you have anything that you want to add or change to this plan? So you could write then, modify this plan, add any new items, remove any items, change any owners, change any dates, and then once you make all those changes with the prospect, you lock it in and agree that this is the plan you're going to work against. Now, once you finalize this partnership plan with the prospect, you can then use this plan throughout the remainder of the sales process as a closing tool. When you're working through these steps and the prospect reaches out to you and says, we're going to need to push that meeting out a month, you can go back to the plan and say something like, sure, no problem, we can move the meeting out. But based on the partnership plan that we agreed on and your need to be up and running by the end of the year, if we push that meeting out, that's going to push all of the other steps out, and that will make it difficult to hit that timeline. So either A, we need to revise the plan and revise the date that we're working towards, or we're going to need to decrease the amount of time that we change the next meeting. So as you can see, that discussion and that back and forth with the prospect is a lot easier when you have the partnership plan and you have a lot more power and control. And all of this can help you to keep deals moving forward and improve your consistency in closing the deals that you're working. The next tactic is to use a sales takeaway if you're not able to close the prospect. So of course, if you go for the close and the prospect wants to move forward, there's no reason to use the sales takeaway. But if you're not able to get the prospect to move forward, you could strategically introduce the sales takeaway. And the sales takeaway is basically doing the opposite of trying to get the prospect to move forward. And what this looks like in most cases is you expressing doubt in fit or justification in moving forward to that next step. And this can be really powerful, and it can trigger forward movement, and it can also help to create rapport with the prospect, because this is the opposite of what most salespeople do. When most salespeople aren't able to get the prospect to move forward, they often try harder to get the prospect to move forward, and this can damage rapport and make the prospect feel uncomfortable and sometimes push prospects away. When you do the opposite, by expressing doubt and slightly taking away the option to move forward, it can sometimes make prospects feel a little bit more comfortable that you care about their best interests and that you're interested in making sure that moving forward is the right fit for both parties, because you're expressing doubt whether or not both parties should move forward. So let me show you what this looks like. And a good way to picture this is by using this saying, when in doubt, call it out. So the calling it out is the takeaway. And the doubt is that the prospect isn't ready to move forward and you're not able to close the prospect. So when the prospect isn't moving forward and you're not able to close, call it out, and that might look something like this. Let's say that the prospect is on the fence. To try to push forward and try harder to get the prospect to get off of the fence would be for you to talk more about the product's features and try to build more interest. The takeaway would be to say something like this. It seems like you're having trouble figuring out at what direction to go. Maybe this is not a good fit for you right now. And so when you do this, if the prospect genuinely has a need for what you sell and you've done a good job of building interest and there's a chance for them to move forward, but they're just sitting kind of in idle position, this may get them to move forward. Now, if you haven't done a good job of some of the standard blocking and tackling, like qualifying and building interest and communicating value, if you do the takeaway, the prospect might just accept your takeaway and confirm their decision to not move forward. So it is a bit of a risk, and you might want to be careful which prospects you do the takeaway with. And while that might sound like a risk, in some cases, if the prospect is never going to buy from you, and the only thing that stands in the future discussions is more wasted time, if you do the takeaway and the prospect confirms your takeaway and you close the file, in a lot of those cases, you just saved both you and the prospect a lot of time continuing to discuss something that they were never going to purchase. Hopefully that gives you a few tools that you can easily adopt to improve your ability to close deals and become a better closer. If you want more information, the best place to go is salescriptor.com. If you want more tips, there are plenty of videos on our website. There are also ebooks that you can download for free. If you want more information on the SalesScriptor software, there are plenty of videos that demonstrate all of the different features of the software on our website. And if you want to contact us, this is the best place to go. You can get our phone number, email address. There's a chat window as well. Thanks for being here. Hope this was helpful, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.